My sister and I lost our dad a year ago. He was my only parent. Mom was never in mine or my sister's life. Dad left money, inheritance, for me and sister, and she used her inheritance to get new cars and renovate her house. I live with my aunt right now cause my brother-in-law didn't let me stay with my sister. I'm planning on using my inheritance money to pay for college tuition. I've always wanted to be doctor but haven't decided which branch yet. My sister and I haven't been close. It started after she got married to her chronically ill husband, who was allowed to make backhanded comments about dad and mock his illness, and make a scene at his funeral. Only because he's ill and shouldn't be held accountable for his behavior. I've distanced myself, but my sister kept visiting a lot lately, venting about my brother-in-law's condition. He's been in and out the hospital for heart problems and in need for a surgery. She brought up my inheritance money several times, but I end up cutting the conversation. She then straight up asked if I could help pay for her husband's surgery and she'd pay back in less than a year. I felt uneasy cause if I give her money from my inheritance, which is a large amount, then there's no guarantee she'll pay back before it's time to apply for college. I'm taking a year gap, but I know my sister can't pay back that much and I felt I was risking my future. I refused to help and she had a meltdown at my aunt's house, calling me heartless, cruel with no empathy. She said that her husband's health should be a priority and I needed to help because education is nothing compared to someone's health, and asked if I'd be happy to see her as a widow and my nephew with no father. My aunt suggested others pay, but most of them cut my sister and her husband off. I argued that her husband's poor health isn't my fault after she kept blaming and guilt-tripping me. She kept crying, and although my aunt decided to stay out of it, she said that I should be prepared for permanent damage in my relationship with my sister if I don't help her now. She's been sending texts and pictures of her family telling me this is what I was saying no to. A happy, healthy family with a healthy husband and father. I cried and felt like I was being selfish, not good aunt and sister. I asked my friend and he said let them sell the cars and all the luxurious stuff they bought to afford the surgery, and warned me, if I give them money I'll never get it back and may not be able to go to medical school. I have two sisters that I'm close with. I also have a niece, Leah. Leah's 16, and after my ex-wife decided to split up and divorce due to infertility problems that lasted for 5 years. I started a college fund for Leah to help her go to her chosen college. That was in 2019. Now I visit my mother's home, where my sister and Leah are living, every week to spend the weekend together. This past weekend I was asleep upstairs while my mother, my sister and Leah were in the kitchen. I came downstairs to grab a glass of water and heard my sister talking about my ex-wife expecting a baby with her new husband. This struck a nerve and I kind of froze from shock. I then heard Leah react to the news repeatedly saying, "I told you so, I told you so." Then explained she's always thought that I was the one with a problem for not being able to have a baby with my ex, but that I was too afraid to admit due to fragile masculinity. I could not believe what she said, but what made it worse is her following statement about how my ex was smart to get a divorce before it was too late. I went upstairs and into the room and shut the door and stayed there for hours. Mom and sister saw me about to leave and insisted to know what the problem was. I didn't want to argue, but I told them that I heard what Leah said about me. Leah stopped eating and got quiet. My sister tried to play dumb, but I told her I heard their entire conversation about my ex-wife and her pregnancy news. My sister tried to backpedal, saying Leah is just a kid who doesn't know much about this stuff and was just spouting nonsense. I told them I don't want to talk about it and they refused to let me leave, but I left eventually. I later sent my sister a text telling her about how hurt and devastated I was because of what Leah said, and told her I will no longer be responsible for funding her education. My sister kept trying to call, then texted saying Leah didn't mean what she said and offered to make her apologize, but I didn't feel comfortable being in the same room with someone who blamed me for something that was out of my control and something that literally turned my life upside down. My mother tried to get me to come over so we could talk, saying Leah doesn't deserve me turning my back on her like that. I haven't seen my sister nor Leah after what happened, but they are still trying to contact me, which means there's still a room for a discussion, and so I decided to go see them tomorrow. Sit down together and have a long conversation, but this. I admit that I was mad when I told my sister about the college fund cancellation. I love Leah so much and see her as my own daughter. Unfortunately, her dad My brother-in-law is deceased, and so I understand losing a parent at a young age and relate to the kind of hurt she carries inside. Lost my father in an accident when I was 11, and I think that sitting down and talking things out is the best option before I make any decision. Also, one more thing to clarify, both my ex-wife and I were having these fertility issues. Both sides, but since my ex-wife got pregnant soon after her new marriage, then my family thought that I was the problem originally. It is what it is, and I'm learning to not words get in my head so easily. I'm not mad at anyone, I'm just trying to move on with my life like anybody else. My sister and her husband have been struggling with infertility since they got married 12 years ago. They've tried absolutely everything, from medical to spiritual, but unfortunately, nothing works. Now that she's approaching late 30s, they're starting to look into adoption, but it's also been a slow going. Since their financial condition isn't exactly stable from multiple rounds of fertility treatments they went through. I can only imagine the struggle, and I sympathize with her. But the stress this situation is bringing her and her husband honestly puts a strain on our relationship. My husband and I lost our best friends, Mason and his wife, Kate, 2 weeks ago in a horrible car accident. They left behind their son Pete, who isn't even 2 yet. It was so sudden and so heart-wrenching. We're still grieving, which lowers out contact with a lot of people, including my sister and Bil. Our main concern right now is ourselves and Pete, whose custody has come to us because we're both his godparents. Actively engaged in Pete's life since his birth. And because Mason and Kate have neither left a will nor have immediate living relatives who can take him in. We've decided to adopt Pete as soon as we can stomach the process. My husband and I never planned on having kids, and even if we did, this is absolutely not the way we want to go about it. The situation is far from ideal, but we're starting the adoption process yesterday, for Pete's safety if nothing else. We broke the news to our extended families and friends, letting them know that my husband and I won't be very available for a little longer because of this. I know my sister and brother-in-law will have something to say about this. I'm prepared for a few heated text messages or voicemails. However, I didn't expect them to turn up on our doorstep, crying about how unfair it is that we were given everything they wanted, and how we didn't deserve to be parents because we didn't go through what they had to. I've never seen my husband so angry before. He's usually very mild and gentle, but recent events have stretched our patience to the limits. We kicked them off of our porch, and I told my sister before she left that since our pain inconveniences her so much, I won't have her around me and my family at all anymore. I know she made a fuss about it, and now everyone has something to say to us. We turned off our phones, so we don't know which ones are cursing us and which one aren't. I know some did //r. My husband and I are both in pain and grieving, and we can't trust ourselves to be objective. For the sake of disclosure, my husband and I are both men. No, this is not a case of homophobia. My sister, for all her fault, was the first person to accept me for who I love. My fiancé Ollie and I have been together for 4 years, living together for 2, recently got engaged. Our relationship has been great for the most part. One of the few things we disagree on is animals. I love animals and Ollie feels indifferent towards most animals. To give a little background about me, I've always been an animal lover. Throughout my childhood, my mom hated animals, especially dogs. My mom never let us have any pets, and she used to tell us that once we were adults we could have whatever animals we wanted. When I moved away for college, I lived on campus for 4 years, and therefore couldn't have any pets. I've wanted a dog for as long as I could remember, but up until recently it wasn't in the cards for me to have a dog. Ollie and I currently live in a not-so-pet-friendly city for renters. I always lived in apartments that never allowed pets, even with a pet deposit. When Ollie and I met, I told her about wanting to get a dog someday. Ollie told me that she doesn't like a lot of dogs, but would be open to the right dog. This was in the very beginning of us meeting. I basically made it really clear that I will own a dog one day. Throughout our relationship, I would occasionally bring up wanting a dog. Ollie would remind me that our apartment doesn't allow for pets, which was true. Ollie and I agreed that once we moved into a place that allowed for pets, we would look into getting a dog. About 2 months ago, Ollie and I moved into a house just outside of the city we work in. The house is a good size for the 2 of us, plus extra. The landlord is pet friendly, and the house has a huge, fenced-in yard. It's a much more residential area, and there's a dog park about 3 blocks from the house. On top of the house being perfect for a dog, I'm in a financial place where I can afford a dog. I make very good money and I don't have to travel for work. I'm mentally prepared for potential pet fees and other expenses for having people watch the dog. Since we're finally settled in the house, I decided to mention to Ollie again about going to the shelter and looking at the adoptable dogs. Only this time, Ollie didn't have an excuse for why we couldn't get one. After a few weak excuses, sometimes we go away, Ollie broke down and told me that she doesn't want a dog. In fact, she's never wanted a dog. She was hoping I would forget about my dreams of wanting a dog. I'm not sure what to do. I'm trying to reason with Ollie, but she said her answer will always be no to a dog. She just doesn't like them and doesn't want them. She basically gave me an ultimatum, either her or my potential dog. I'm feeling shitty about this, because I always made it clear to her that I was going to want a dog someday. I feel like she was banking on something unrealistic, and now she's putting me in a lousy spot.